The Markiplier allegations just took a turn. If you hadn't heard, Markiplier was recently accused of faking one of his biggest achievements as a Five Nights at Freddy's YouTuber, FNAF 2's 1020 mode. One of the most notoriously difficult challenges in the series for players to complete, at least outside of the one that shall not be named, where every animatronic in the game was activated and put on max difficulty. But for Markiplier, a YouTuber often regarded as the King of FNAF, many had the expectation that this sort of challenge would just be another walk in the park for him. Well, not exactly. Because while Markiplier is undeniably an incredible entertainer, he's never had the reputation for having on-par skills with the more professional level FNAF speedrunners. So beating 1020 mode in FNAF 2 at the time was essentially the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest backwards and naked. It was a truly noteworthy milestone, and after countless failed attempts and more blood, sweat, and tears put into its completion than nearly all of Mark's past challenges, he was finally able to beat 1020 mode, proving his capability as a FNAF YouTuber, or so we thought. You see, 2 days ago, the FNAF challenge YouTuber, The Bones5, made a video readdressing Markiplier's completed challenge. I want to clarify that in no way was the video created in an attempt to cancel or personally attack Mark in any way. Based on this YouTuber's background in FNAF challenges, he was able to conduct a detailed analysis over some of the more skeptical parts of Markiplier's video that had even raised a few flags at the time. Because while most of Markiplier's fanbase celebrated his achievement and moved on, a handful of viewers noticed a few strange inconsistencies in Mark's final 1020 video. And once these inconsistencies were finally investigated a bit further, findings were oddly compelling, to say the least. The original breakdown pointed out that Mark's successful challenge attempt contained numerous cuts and splices that don't appear in any of his previous challenge completion videos, which in itself isn't definitive of any wrongdoing by any means, but inside of these cuts, things got weirder. There were mainly two specific oddities, with the first being the fact that in Mark's final clip right before he finally beats the game, there was around a 20-second window where there were 0 toy animatronics, something laid out by Bones5 as something that had around a 1 in a few billion chance of happening if you also add on the complete lack of any toy animatronic moving noises in this final clip as well. The evidence was pointing to a 420 completed run being spliced together with the original 1021, as the main 4 animatronics are all that pop up in the final segment of Mark's run. But the second problem with Mark's challenge completion took some real game theory detective work, because it turns out in one of the spliced video sections, a single strand of Mark's hair visibly moves in one direction, then instantly snaps back a frame later when it switches between cuts. Again, showing extremely well documented evidence for the idea that 2 different recordings were stitched together to make this video. Maybe the first time a YouTuber was betrayed by his own scalp. With the Bones5 going out of his way to avoid accusing Markiplier of any bad faith or malicious intent despite the findings, the overall reaction to this news from the audience was still unlike anything we've ever seen. You see, while an old 10-year drama typically wouldn't cause any major pushback from fans regardless, at least depending on the situation, mixing it with the rock-solid reputation of the FNAF King caused a phenomenon that has practically never happened before. Other than the occasional disappointed Mark fan that felt like they were just told their life was a lie, people were generally more supportive towards Mark after hearing the news. Instead of turning on him, fans wrote comments including, "Markiplier allegedly cheating in FNAF 2 is so funny, like he's real as heck for that. Markiplier cheated? Good. I'm glad he did." The continuous support seemed to eradicate what would normally be a controversial update. Further coverage of the situation regarded it as heartbreaking news, but even with the negative packaging of the video, there were still comments including, "I love how this is Markiplier's worst drama," and the guy who's accusing Markiplier still said, "Yeah, I don't care that he cheated, I completely understand." Markiplier is just impossible to hate. Basically showing that not only does such a positive reputation counter any possible controversy from certain situations, but it could also somehow reverse it into good news.